I call this meeting to order. This is a regular meeting of the Northfield Public School Board. Today is Monday, September 26, 2022, and the time is 6 p.m. This meeting is being live streamed and recorded. The recording of this meeting will be posted on the district website as soon as possible. I'd like to thank members of the public for attending this school board business meeting to observe the work being done on behalf of all school district stakeholders. We appreciate the time you took to be here this evening. Hey, Dr. Hillman, we have some items in the table file.
Yes, we have several items in the table file this evening. Many of them personnel items in the consent agenda. So we have several appointments, several increase, decrease, and changes in assignment. We have a couple of leaves of absence. We have a termination, and we have a preliminary district enrollment report.
Okay, thank you. If there are no objections, we will add these items to the agenda as we move forward. Okay, is there a motion to approve the agenda as presented? Moved by Jeff. Second? Second by Corey. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Okay, motion carries. We now move on to the public comment portion of our meeting. We do have one person signed in to make a comment, and so I just have some brief comments before we call our speaker. This is an opportunity for residents, business and property owners, parents, guardians, students, and employees of the Northfield School District to address the board. All comments to the board must adhere to the guidelines set in place by District Policy 206 regarding public comment. This is not a time to debate an issue, but only for the board to hear your comments. You are prohibited from making comments about specific students, staff, and administrators. The board respects and values input, but when it relates to a specific individual or a specific matter, this input must be heard by the appropriate personnel, including the building principal or superintendent, and not during an open meeting of the school board. You will be gavelled out of order if your comments are not in compliance with these guidelines. Please address the board from the podium. After being recognized by the board chair, identify yourself, and if you represent a group. We will require that you limit your remarks to 3 minutes. You are not allowed to yield your time to another person. It is expected that members of the public will address their remarks with civility and respect. Personal attacks by anyone addressing the board are unacceptable. The board has allotted up to a total of 30 minutes for public comment at regular school board meetings. I will now begin to call those who have signed up to speak in the order in which they signed in. Vice Chair Amy Gurwitz will be monitoring the speaker's time. She will signal each speaker with the time they have remaining in 1 minute, 30-second, and 10-second intervals. Again, please make your comments as brief as possible, but no more than 3 minutes. Okay, so we have Rich Graves. Welcome.
Thank you, Claudia, although I won't say anything personal. So I'm not, despite the shirt, I am not representing the Vintage Van Festival or any other organization. Welcome to the civically engaged students. As I was just saying, I hope you never grow up, so you need to do this, although it's fun. As many of you know, there were deliberate attempts to rattle Minnesotans in the last week. Last Wednesday, there were 14 calls to schools across Minnesota, strategically placed. Like if you look at a map, they're like scattered around Minnesota with false reports of school shootings. As you know, I don't think Minnesota schools have actually had an inside school shooting since 2005. Is that right? The Red Lake thing. I mean, there's been incidents on playgrounds, but essentially we had a attempt just last week to try to scare people into extreme measures or something, or to distract the police, or just for kicks. I don't know. I don't understand these people. So I just want to thank the board for your continued poise throughout the pandemic as people tried to rattle us or tried to do whatever. Minnesotans tend to have thick skin, and depending on how recent the fair was and what time of year, thick blubber. And I think, you know, this aggression will not either stand or bother us. Like, you know, I think our schools are safe. There's been some false reports and some incidents at the schools, as you guys know. People have tried to scare my kids. People have tried to scare other people. There have been racist incidents that have been dealt with forthrightly. Thank you. There are people who have different views on the anti-bullying policy. And again, thank you for holding fast and moderately. So we're not going to do anything crazy in either direction. We're Minnesotans. We're just going to get along and carry on. I got about a minute left, so I just want to no specific advocacy, but just in case anyone has anything to do later tonight, we're meeting with friends at the Friends, the Cannon Valley Friends, the Quakers on Washington Street. There's a meeting of Moms Demand Action to talk about, you know, crazy people with guns and how they really shouldn't be in schools. So thanks.
Okay, thank you, Rich. Okay, we only had one person signed in, so now we move on to announcements and recognitions. Dr. Hillman.
Yes, and I have three really exciting announcements to share with you this evening, all focused on student academic success. So congratulations to 12th grader Henry Vertis, who has been selected as a 2023 National Merit Scholarship semifinalist. On September 14th, the National Merit Scholarship Corporation announced approximately 16,000 national semifinalists, representing less than 1% of high school seniors in the United States. Henry and the other semifinalists will have an opportunity to continue in the competition for the 7,250 national merit scholarships that are worth nearly $28 million that will be offered next spring. So congratulations to Henry. Being a national merit scholarship semifinalist is a big deal, top 1% in the country of academic performance. So congratulations to Henry. We also want to congratulate senior Hannah Hewlett, who was named a commended student in the 2023 National Merit Scholarship Program for her exceptional academic performance. Hannah is among approximately 34,000 commended students from across the nation who are being recognized as part of the program. Commended students place among the top 5% of the 1.5 million students who entered the 2023 merit program by taking the PSAT, or which is the National Merit Scholarship Qualifying Test. And then we also have 3 Northfield High School students who were recognized by the College Board for their academic success as well. And these students excelled in College Board assessments and schoolwork to earn these awards. And these awards, colleges will often use to identify academically competitive, underrepresented students. So we want to congratulate Amelia Rosenhammer, Margaret Muth, and Sophia Weed. Each of those received the National Rural and Small Town Award and are being recognized because of their academic achievements in school and outstanding performance on the PSAT, NMSQT, the PSAT 10 and or AP exam. So with that, there's a variety of different ways that you can earn that recognition. This is the first time since I've been here that I recall us having this particular recognition, this national, at least that it's come to our attention to share with the board. So we're very proud of these 5 students who have been honored by the College Board for their academic prowess. And we congratulate them, and we'll look forward to congratulating them at a future event and reception.
Outstanding. A testament to their work ethic, their family and teachers.
Absolutely.
Any other board members have a event or comment or?
I do just want to remind board members, we do have our, we have it on our upcoming meetings, but on Thursday night, I know Claudia sent something out about our work session on Thursday night that is focused on doing some work around some potential survey results regarding the high school projects. But we are going to take a board photo on Thursday night. So make sure, yes, I know, Tom. So make sure you wear your Sunday best for the board photo on Thursday night.
Great. Okay, well, now we're on to item 5, items for discussion and reports, and we have 3 items tonight. First, we welcome an update from our District Youth Council. Welcome Grace Ryden and Connor Percy.
All right. Is this close enough? Is that good? Okay, perfect. Well, hi, everyone. My name is Grace Ryden, and this is Connor Percy. I'm a senior at the high school this year, and Connor is a junior. We are the co-chairs of District Youth Council, DYC. So thank you for having us today. It's always such a pleasure to connect with the school board. DYC is here to foster connections between the school board, the administration, and the student body. If you give me just 1 second here. DYC is comprised of 10th through 12th students who are, sorry, excuse me. There we go. Sorry about that. In DYC, students 10 through 12 gather every other week to discuss issues facing our school, updates from around the community, and projects that can be done for the benefit of the district. This group is student-led with the help of our adult advisor, Malia Fallen. On DYC, we have 3 subcommittees. We have each one of those subcommittees, we have another student leader. Connections is for keeping in touch with the student body. Communications is for connecting DYC with the school administration, and equity, inclusion, and wellness is for projects revolving around including and welcoming students of all socioeconomic and identity-based backgrounds in the Northfield district. To ensure that we have a comprehensive view of the district that we're working in, Dr. Hillman and Julie Pritchard relay important information from the school board and from the administration to DYC. In addition, at least one DYC member attends each school board meeting and reports back to the group. Alongside school board meetings, DYC students also serve on a district board or committee as a student representative. For example, I attend Northfield Forward meetings as a student rep, and others might attend policy, wellness, or facility committees, among others. This type of involvement allows students to experience the inner workings of the district on specific things that really truly affect them. And it also allows for student perspective in spaces where that might not be common or intuitively accessed. After DYC students attend a meeting for their committee, they report that back to the big group so we can all have that information. To name some of the other major things we did last year, we organized and held a brunch between DYC and the school board to get to know one another, which I hope some of you might remember. We also filled girls' restrooms with free period products and worked on sending out bi-weekly COVID updates to the high school. We also sent out various surveys to students to gauge their opinions on certain issues that was particularly in reference to equity and inclusion, and provided input to administrators on what students wanted in regards to renovating the high school.
All right, we are very excited for this year in DYC. We've only had one official work meeting, but all of our committees are off to amazing starts. So I'll go into a little bit about what they're doing. Our communications subcommittee is planning a weekly announcement question for the administration. So kind of like a get to know you thing, because we have like almost an entirely new administration this year, with Mr. Warren being the only person continuing, and he just started last year. So we'd like to kind of connect the school body to the administration. I think that'd be really nice. And then they're also going to work as a conduit to share information between the student board and the school board. Our connections subcommittee, they'll be working on the school board candidate forum, which will be held in the high school auditorium, where both DYC and students will be able to ask candidates questions. They will also plan another school board brunch to bring together the school board, all the new and existing members together to get to know each other. Our equity, inclusion, and wellness committee has a lot of ideas that we threw out at the first meeting. Some including continuing to fill period products and expanding on the project to more bathrooms, including like the gender neutral bathrooms. Sending out a survey to the staff and student body to see what they think the school could do better at equity and inclusion. Raising awareness to students about their ability to change their name in the yearbook if they have a different gender identity or a different name that they change their name to. And also possibly getting some funding to sponsor student sections at events to lower the prices for some disadvantaged members of our school. That's all. Thank you. Any questions?
Excellent. Thank you so much, Grace and Connor. Such a valuable and important group. Thanks for your work. Board members, any questions or comments? Amy.
Thank you both for your presentation. Are we going to have another brunch with you this year?
Yes, we very much hope so.
That's the plan.
Great, thank you.
Julie.
So yes, thank you for all your work, and I am honored to be the school board liaison, and I always enjoy our meetings and come away feeling really good about the work that you do and the student voice that you're giving not only the administration but the board as well. So my question, 2 questions. The communication piece, obviously really key. What ways have you found to be effective in terms of communicating what you learn at a school board meeting or from our district youth council meetings, specifically with the rest of the student body?
I personally think that Schoology is a really valuable resource. And so in years past, sending out like those COVID updates, and more recently, the administration themselves sending out like just regular weekly updates. Schoology is probably the primary way we do that. And then also, just talking to our friends about what happened. That's kind of another word of mouth type of situation that helps spread information as well.
Sure. Thank you. And then I had another question. You noted that you had done some student surveys regarding equity and inclusion. Sounds like it was the end of last school year. Have you had a chance to review those, and how will that inform some of that committee's work this year?
We didn't actually do that last year. That's one of our goals for this year.
Oh,
So
I'm
we're gonna,
sorry.
no, that's okay. Okay, that's all right. But we're hoping to send that out very soon and then use that feedback throughout the rest of the year.
Okay, that's excellent. Thank you.
Nice. Good. Any other questions or comments?
So we always appreciate when our district youth council leaders come in. They're always so humble, right? Because we need to remind people that this is not normal, right? In terms of the level of voice that our district youth council has within our community. As I like to remind people, this is a program that was honored by the University of Minnesota's Humphrey School of Public Affairs, Public Service, with a local government innovation award just a few years ago. And we've been written about in the Star Tribune. Jennifer Brooks did an article last year on the level of student voice that we have in this community. I was very proud at the Back to School Minnesota Department of Education meeting, which is all the superintendents and a lot of other central office staff from across the state. There was a session on youth voice, and our own Connor Percy and some other folks from District Youth Council were there both in person and remotely. Connor was there in person. At least one other student was there remotely. So the work that our District Youth Council has been recognized by the University of Minnesota, by people in the Twin Cities, showing us as an example of what you can do when you elevate student voice. And then the work that these students do, I think it's just important to share with the people watching here in person on the live stream. These District Youth Council students are on every single one of our school district advisory committees. And when these students speak, the adults on those communities, who are often, many of you at this table, parents from the community members without kids, staff. And when our students are on these very important advisory committees, ranging from things like policy to facilities, finance advisory, people really care what the student experience is. And so I just want to congratulate the District Youth Council has evolved. Malia has seen it evolve over the years. It's really evolved to a point that we're incredibly proud of, because you provide such authentic perspectives for the adults to hear and help them make their decisions. And you are part of this next generation. Every District Youth Council has a handoff of authority, if you will. And this is just the latest handoff of authority. And I think that that's important to see how each District Youth Council reinvents itself, right, with the new people who are on it. But yet you see the string of how it goes all the way back to the start and the issues that people care about and how they were handed down from youth council to youth council, because it reinvents itself every year, because we have some kids graduate and other kids come on, right? So you did an excellent job, but I just can't let you get away without telling the rest of the community about all of those amazing things that you do. So thank you for being great representatives for your friends and your neighbors, and being great representatives of the student body.
Thank you.
Thank you. There are no more comments or questions. Okay. Thank you so much. Okay, now we're on to the high school facility plan voter survey and update. Dr. Hellman and Director Mercer.
Yes, this is a very simple update tonight, because I just wanted to give you a couple of items about where we're at with the survey. And then I also wanted to share a little bit with you about what you can anticipate in the work session on Thursday night. So very briefly, I got the update from Dr. Don Lifto this morning that they have already completed 250 of the 400 phone calls. They started calling district residents last Tuesday. So I'm really impressed with how quickly they have gotten that amount of feedback. They anticipate that they will have completed those calls by this Thursday. I've had a few people from the community reach out to me and say, hey, I got a phone call. And the survey ended up being with a lot of great feedback and input. We had a very small committee of folks. Claudia was on that committee to give us some initial ideas about the survey. A few board members also were able to give a little bit of some additional feedback before it went live. And it ended up right around 40 questions. It takes about 15 minutes to implement the survey. I do think you're going to get some excellent data back that will help you with your determination about what pathway do you go with the high school question. And so what we know we're testing is we're testing the components of, well, first of all, we're validating that the people that we're calling are residents of the school district. We are asking them a handful of demographic and perspective questions about what they think about the school district. Then we are testing pieces around the concepts that are both in pathway 1 and pathway 2, right? A more traditional renovation versus an addition to the high school, some modest demolition of some of the oldest areas and stitching that together. The potential addition of athletic facilities, and that's done in a couple of different waves. So one around what we've talked about, the field house, and another about some questions about the ice arena. I just want to remind people that the city of Northfield is paying for half the survey. And so they had some really good input on those questions that are really shared with the city. They do validate, they've got a little bit of way that they validate, you know, when they are talking to voters, which percentage of them are property taxpayers, it's just a fascinating process. And so the fact that they have 250 responses already, I mean, people have to talk to them for about 15 minutes. So, you know, a lot of people don't answer the phone anymore, but what Peter Leatherman told me when we contracted with them is that, as I've shared with you before, people will talk about local issues. Once you hit the state or the national level issues, that's what people say. I don't want to take my time giving you information. So we think you're going to get some really good data. We anticipate, we're hoping to be able to have that data live for you on the October 10th board meeting, at worst, the October 24th board meeting, but our goal is the October 10th meeting. And that just shifts me to Thursday night. So on Thursday night, I want you to know intentionally, you are not going to get a packet ahead of time. And there's a reason for that. So we've posted the agenda, and it's simply a discussion about potential hypothetical scenarios of what you would get back in that data. Because we want you to think about those potential scenarios before the data gets back, so that you get a practice. Okay, if the results come back in one way, what would you think about it? If it comes back in a different way, how would you think about it? So that you can do a little bit of intellectual work ahead of getting the actual results. So you have had some time to anticipate what would your thoughts be depending on how that survey data comes back. I think it's going to help you when we get the data back to come to consensus on what the next steps are. I think I'm not really about the more quickly, but it's going to keep putting us on the time frame to be able to ask a question in February, should that be something that you would like to do. And so anticipate will probably take you through anywhere between 4 and 6 scenarios. The scenarios will be around pathway 1 and pathway 2. They'll also mix in different results on the athletics portion of the survey. So I want you that's what I'm giving you. And then we're intentionally not giving you them ahead of time because we want you to authentically engage in the scenarios so that you haven't had a chance to do a lot of thinking about them ahead of time to get your, what I'm calling the cold read on them. So Sal Bagley and myself and Anita and Val, we talked about different approaches to this. This is where we've landed because we think it's going to do the best for you to help you start to get toward consensus. If board members would like something different than that, you should let me know and make sure you have really good reasons, because we have a good plan for this and we think you're going to enjoy the opportunity together. So that's just the update on the voter survey and what we're going to do on Thursday night when we're in work session.
Thank you. And can you talk again about how the phone calling is being done? Is it just landlines? Is it mobile phones?
Yeah, it's both. Yes, it's my understanding is it is both. So they have, they have access to the same kind of a database that any other organization can get. So it is a mix of landline and of cell phones.
Because a lot of cell phones have out of state or out of
Correct.
area,
And
area codes.
One of the reasons we did, we did put it in, or at least we were able to do this in our parent update, and we also shared it on KYMN radio the last time that I was there to talk about that we are doing this survey. And so if you do see something around we want you to make sure that you actually answer the phone and give us your feedback if you're willing to do so. So you're right. There are going to be people who ignore it or don't answer or think it's coming from somewhere else. But my understanding is it is a Twin Cities area code is my understanding. So
Good, thank you. Tom?
How does it show up on a caller ID? Because if I get one, or my phone will just say, it's probably not a call I want to take. So does it show up as the Not a voter survey. You wouldn't want that, but it is something else or just a phone number.
It's from Morris. It will say Morris Leatherman.
Good question. Amy.
Are any residents disqualified from participating, like school district employees or board members or the superintendent?
No, I mean, if you are, I mean, if a person is, if you are lucky enough to be randomly, was anybody lucky to be randomly, that, I'm doing the math in my head, that would be pretty impressive, right? No, people aren't disqualified unless the only time that they potentially could be disqualified if for whatever reason, let's say that there was an old record, and they because one of the first questions they will ask is to validate, do you live at this address? So let's say that the person had lived at an address within the district, but they have moved and they say, no, I don't live there anymore. Then they will say, thank you for your time and move on. So that's the only condition that I can think of where they would not complete the call. If
Julie.
somebody's lucky enough to get, I'm just doing the math in my head about what the chances of that are.
How many questions did the survey end up being?
Around 40.
Anyone else? No? Okay, very good. Thank you so much.
You bet.
And now we're on to your operations and strategic plan update.
Correct. All right, we just have a few items for you this evening. I'm going to add one item on to the end here around school safety that I just have a couple of comments I want to make. So the first thing is I want the board to have a heads up about an important item that is going to be on the agenda the next 2 meetings, and it's around the district's health insurance renewal. And so as you all know, we have long had a very successful self-funded health insurance program. In fact, we did not have a premium increase for our district employees for over a decade. Pretty amazing. We had built a fund balance 4 times what the recommendations of our consultant was. And just like with all health insurance, you know, you can have years of great returns, and then you can have something that can turn fairly quickly. And so we, thankfully for having that fund balance, we have been able to try to do as soft of a landing as possible. But we did see, as you know, last fall, we did see a substantial increase to our premiums. And this board put in $1 million toward making sure that we could maintain the employee cost of health insurance to the best of your ability. It was $500,000 from our general fund balance and $500,000 from our COVID relief funds. And so we said to you at that time that we anticipate, or we are going to do everything we could to make this a one-time expense. The district's benefits advisory committee has done some really hard work over the last year. We have some really challenges, you know, right now with our health insurance program. We are not anticipating to see as big of a premium increase this year as we did last year, not even close to what we were going to experience last year. But some of the challenges that we do face are that we do have a situation where 1% of the participants in the health insurance program right now are responsible for 32% of the claims. And that's what insurance is here for, right? Insurance is here for if you have an issue, regardless of how expensive it is, as long as it's within the plan. But that is a reality that we're facing, that we have 1% of our participants right now responsible for approximately 32% of our claims. I want you to know that the district did recently solicit bids earlier than we needed to and use the HITA process. So HITA stands for Health Insurance Transparency Act. This was something that was implemented several years ago. And it is actually a really good thing for districts in terms of trying to get quotes on their health insurance. So unlike a typical bid where we give you the bid specs and you bid it, we have a bid opening, the lowest responsible bidder is the winner. The Health Insurance Transparency Act allows school districts to do 2 rounds. You get 2 bites at the apple. So you publish the bid specifications for your health insurance program. Companies make a bid. We open the bids. We do not disclose the bids, but we do disclose what the amount of the lowest responsible bid is. And then all of the companies then get to bid again, right? So it's good for school districts because everybody knows what the bar is, and then people can come back in again. So we have done that again. We weren't required to do that this year. We even did go out and get a quotation on what would it cost to return to fully insured. We know that that's we didn't anticipate that it was going to be better than staying as a self-insured district, but we wanted to do due diligence and make sure that we did that. So what I'm preparing you for is it is very likely that we will ask you to make at least a portion of what you invested in the program last year ongoing to set a new baseline or a new floor. And our team has done a lot of work around trying to look at alternative solutions. But in order to keep our insurance a reasonable price for those people who participate, which is an important thing, it is very likely we're going to have to ask you to make a portion of what you invested last year in this. Not saying the entire piece, we're still working that out, but a portion of it as an ongoing, basically resetting the baseline. And for those of you, some of you who have been on the board for a number of years and remember my predecessor, Dr. Chris Richardson, we always put a dollar amount in contracts, right? We don't say we'll cover 80%. We put a dollar amount in because, first of all, that's just good budgeting. And second, it also allows us to be thoughtful about how much do we contribute from the board to the program. But in general, our goal as a board and as a district for probably 2 decades now is, in general, roughly an 80-20 split between 80% of the premium covered by the district and around 20% by the employee. Now that has gone up and down a little bit over time. And every time we come back to reset the baseline, that's what we try to get. We're not ever there. Rarely are we ever there perfectly, but we are looking at resetting the baseline for employees at that roughly 80-20 mark. So you're going to get a formal presentation on this at the next meeting. Molly Wieselman, our director of HR, who I would submit knows more about school health insurance than probably close to anyone in the state. Val, and then remember that benefits advisory committee, it's really a participatory leadership approach because we have representatives from all of the collectively bargained unions who are on that team. So it's a collective decision because it's all of us together, right? Making those determinations about what's the recommendation for the premium cost each year. Because remember, with self-funded health insurance, we collect the premiums, and then we contract with a third party to be able to do the processing of it. But at the end of the day, we pay our bills. And if for some of you who've been around for a while, you remember when we were back with the Southeast Service Cooperative, for several years in a row, we were leaving millions of dollars on the table because our claims were far less than what some of those other partner districts were. And so those other districts were getting the benefit of our premiums. And it really showed for a decade, we were able to continue to build that fund balance. And so we couldn't increase those premiums at that time. When you have a fund balance that's 4 times the amount of what the consultant recommends, it's very hard to say, well, we should just do a 2% increase to keep it going. I do think that this experience, will, because we had, I'm not going to say it's drastic, but we saw it coming, but it did happen. I think it's fair to say fairly quickly. Thankfully, we had the good fiscal discipline to have that money in that health insurance fund balance. Every year, Val talks with you about that particular fund. And so we've maintained a good fund for a long time. It helped us get through this. We're hopeful that we are now rebuilding that fund balance. But I just want to give you a preview of an issue that you're going to be dealing with in the next 2 meetings, because Molly and Val will present at the next meeting about the recommendations of the Benefits Advisory Committee. And then we'll ask you to vote on it at the second meeting in October. This is not inconsequential. It is quite serious, both from the perspective of ensuring that that fund is has stability, and then also to make sure that we provide an excellent health insurance program. And we've done all of the hard work by minimizing the total number of programs or plans that people can choose from, by making sure that we're using some high impact strategies like an HRA approach as well. We've had great insurance. We need to make sure we keep that going. We had this significant change, and we think we're hopefully at a point where we're turning that corner and are going to be able to start building that fund balance again. So I just wanted to make sure that everyone was on the same page with that this is coming. I'm going to pause at this point. I'm going to ask Val if she has any comments to add, or if I missed anything. I think I was fairly thorough and accurate. Yep, good. All right. Are there any questions about this portion? I just want to offer it right now.
Okay, Tom?
Could you get numbers before the next meeting that if over those years where there was no increase, if it would have gone up a modest 2 or 3 or 4% or whatever, like mine did, what they would be paying currently, or what our contribution would be and what they would be, just to see if we're like way out of line now or not. Thank you.
Great analysis. We can certainly do that. We'll make sure we have that for
What
you, Tom. Great question.
Amy?
I'm just curious if the plan we have right now is considered a high deductible plan or not. Okay.
There are two plans, right? There's the CMA plan and there's the HRA plan. They're different, right? One has a higher deductible than the other, but I don't think it's fair to say either of them are considered to be high deductible. One's a higher deductible, but I don't think the CMA would be the one that would be closer to the high deductible piece.
They actually have the same deductible, I believe. Just different premiums because part of the one goes to the HRA instead.
So are you still, I mean, to be your own insurance provider, you're still gonna have reinsurance, but are you gonna partner direct then with another company, or what is the status?
So I don't think we're allowed to have our stop loss insurance or the reinsurance through another party other than our administrator. I can check with our consultant to see if that's an avenue that we can go through, but that's never been a discussion we've had. So I'm assuming that that's not possible, but I can ask. about
I'm
that.
just thinking that, I mean, we're still gonna stick with, being our own.
You mean staying self-insured rather
Yeah.
than fully insured?
Yeah,
Is that what you mean?
self-insured.
Yes, we will. And we did request a proposal for a fully insured quote. And so we'll share that with you at the next meeting as well.
Very good.
Good questions. Anyone else? You want
Thanks.
to-
I'll continue. I just wanted to give everybody that preview. So the next part I want to share is around our professional learning communities. And you all know we've been using the theme of reset for 2022-23, and our instructional services staff and our teaching staff and our building principals have been continuing with that theme of reset when it comes to our professional learning communities. And so when it comes to our professional learning communities, we have set several guiding principles for the year. Those guiding principles came from a work team of teachers themselves who came in last spring to help reset what were the goals and aligning the procedures that we're using with those goals for that 1 hour of job embedded professional development time that we have every Wednesday morning, which we are so fortunate to have. It is really a gift to us that we want to use and we have used very wisely over the years. So I want to read to you what the PLC guiding principles are for this school year. That PLC work is data-driven, PLC work is student-focused, and it supports the district multi-tiered systems of support process, which includes differentiation and core instruction. What that means is that we are focusing that Wednesday work on what good things can we do for kids when it comes to instruction? How do we leverage the different supports or the different helping teachers that we have for students who maybe aren't learning at the same rate as their peers are? And then also making sure that we try to do different things for different students in the classroom. Not every student, all students can learn. Not every student learns at the same time or in the same way. So how are we able to, within the confines of a regular classroom, offer multiple opportunities for students to learn the content, albeit in slightly different ways? One of our guiding principles that PLC work requires adult learning and instructional change. This is important because we as adults need to make sure that we see ourselves in the continuous improvement model, and that as we learn from data, from our experience in the classroom, that we are learning right alongside the students and that we are ready and prepared to make a change when what we're doing is not working. PLC work requires professional integrity and personal adherence to team norms. So in the second week of PLC time, teams set their norms, which means how are we going to do our work together? And that then once we say how we're going to do our work together, that we hold each other to account to make sure that those norms are adhered to. And then that PLC as equity work and equity work as PLC work. So as you know, we've been working very hard over the past several years on helping people have skill in terms of making sure that equity is delivered in our classroom. That comes from a variety of ways. Initially, it's about some foundational training and some understanding. And then it's looking at, are all of the students in my classroom benefiting from my instruction? And if there are students in my classroom who are not benefiting from my instruction, what do I need to do differently to make that true? So how do I, again, this comes back to a differentiation, but it also understands that we may have to provide different avenues for different students to be successful. And so really emphasizing, this came from our teaching staff very loudly and clearly, that we make sure that we are focusing our equity work this year on those instructional practices that make a difference for everybody. It's not just It's just not cultural appreciation, right? It's about making sure that the actions that we're taking in our classroom are having a difference for all students. And then we have 5 questions that we are using in terms of the kinds of questions that we use with PLCs every week. First of all, what knowledge, skills, and dispositions should every student acquire as a result of this unit, this course, or this grade level? So what are the outcomes that we expect? How do we know when each student has acquired these essential knowledge and skills? So what are the assessments? What are the tests or the projects or the ways that we're going to allow students to be able to demonstrate what they know? Third question is, how do we respond when students do not learn, when some students do not learn? So do we just say, well, I taught it, got to keep moving on? Or do we say, oh, we don't have everybody where we need to be. How are we going to make sure that we get them to where we would like them? Another equally important question is, how do we extend the learning for students who are already proficient? So when students already understand the material, we have some students in the classroom who could teach it and others who are still learning it yet. How do we address both of those issues within the same classroom at the same time? It's not all that simple, but our teachers are doing a very good job of working through that. Then the final question is, who benefited from our instruction and who did not? And that's the equity question that I mentioned before. So also I just want to share that there are 10 deliverables that our PLC teams need to submit to district administration this year to show their progress along the way. And we have always had administrators visit PLCs, but we're systemizing that this year. So we have a spreadsheet that shows all of our principals, our assistant principals, our instructional coaches, several district office staff, including yours truly, who are assigned to visit a couple of different PLCs every Wednesday morning to observe their work, to hear street level what is going on in the PLC and how can we best support them. We've always visited PLCs. We just haven't done it in this systemized way before. So the final item that I have for you before, second to last item, is just Northfield chess. So something that had come up in last year in the budget prioritization process, we moved the chess team from the athletic department, the activities department, to community ed. We now have several very successful student activity programs that go through community education. In fact, our fastest, one of our, if not the fastest, one of our fastest growing activities is our summer bass fishing team. They just sent a bunch of people to that state tournament. It's a awesome activity, but it runs through community ed. That was a model that we were looking at when we moved both chess and cheer to that part of the budget. And what I'm really excited to share with you is that I just learned on Friday, there are 21 students who are now participating in that chess team, which is more than what we've had. I mean, typically it's been in between 10 and 14 or so over the last decade. So there's a significant increase in the number of students participating. In addition, the parents who came before you, if you remember, and talked with you about how important chess was to their students, they have become they're not spectators in it, they're participants. They helped raise around $4,000 in donations through the community education website. They have a full schedule plan. Coach Danina, who coached the team last year, is leading that team once again. So I just want to congratulate that team and their families for their tenacious commitment to the game and their perseverance in shifting to this new funding model. And so it's an example of how we were able to relieve it's a small amount, but again, we didn't leave any stone unturned with that budget prioritization process. And this is an example of how we were able to keep that activity going while still relieving the general fund of some of its responsibility. Then the final piece that I just do want to mention is I do want to briefly talk about the 15 school districts that did receive these false calls last week. I want to do some clarification. Number one, my understanding in talking to a number of those districts, those calls did not go to the school. They actually went to 911 centers, or they went directly to law enforcement agencies. So I just want to be super clear about that. I want to be uber clear that Northfield schools did not receive any of those calls or threats. Just want to make sure that that's really true, that people understand that that is true and that we take every single threat very seriously. And then the final piece is I just want to be super clear too, that to my knowledge, we have not received any direct or credible threats at any of our schools. I can't remember a time of where we've had a credible threat, at any of our schools. Last spring, some people might remember, there was a nationwide rumor that the FBI had debunked about some potential violence on a particular day. That did cause some issues throughout all around the entire nation. And even here in Northfield, we had a number of families who held their students home that day. I want to come back to that. We tell you over and over the things that we do to make sure that we're doing everything we reasonably can to keep our students and our staff safe. Number one, it comes back to relationships. And the fact that what we know from research over and over again is that school is the safest place for students to be, and it's not close. It's safer for school students to be at school than it is to get to school, as I like to joke, except for you're on a Benjamin bus, right? But it's a very safe place for students to be, right? It's very safe. So we want to start there. The second part is that we prioritize building relationships. And what we know is if our students have a relationship with an adult at the school, they will tell someone if they are worried about their friends. Not only here do we have adults, but we take this student piece and we take it even further. We have what I consider to be a fairly innovative program in terms of students supporting students. I'm looking at our crowd here tonight. Is anybody here students supporting students? If you are, just raise your. We have over 30 students at the high school who were selected by their peers to be helpful and supportive to their classmates. And they receive specialized training from the Hazelden Foundation for that. I could go through the list of 14 or 15 things that I have shared via email with our families a number of times, but that relationship support is the most important thing, because if something is wrong, people will tell us. And we want them to tell us. We want us, if you see something, say something. If you're concerned about something, say something to us. We will help make sure we intervene. We have also done the kinds of things that are reasonable to make sure that our entrances are secure, that our schools are secure. Today, multiple schools practiced a lockdown. It was a lockdown practice. We do those drills, we practice them, but just in light of what we had seen and what we had shared, and I know that Mr. Byers shared what I had sent to families last Thursday, even though we weren't affected, we do know that we take those things seriously. We try to watch, we try to check in with other districts who were affected, learn from them. How did they handle it? And then we share it with parents, and then Mr. Byers shared it with those students. So I just thought it was worthwhile. I want to be just super clear. We had nothing from last week. There were no credible threats to us from last week. And then again, I do not recall a time where we have had a credible threat here in Northfield. Knock on wood. But the fact is, I thought it was important just to share that here at the end this evening.
Absolutely. Thank you. That was very thorough. Board members, do you have any questions or comments on any of the items? Hey, Amy?
I'm just wondering how many PLCs there are and about how many people are in them.
Great question. If you can, you just talk for a minute, I'll get you, because I think there's something like 76 PLCs. I'm gonna go with 76. I'd have to go back and look here. I have a sheet with 7 tabs, and I don't think you want me doing math in front of you. So Bridgewater, for example, has 9.
And how many people are in?
They're between 4 and 6. Spring Creek has 9. Middle school has 9, so they're a little bit more. For high school has 14, or no, I'm sorry, 27. High school has 27. So you can start doing the math there. It gets up there pretty quickly. Easily. And I didn't even get to the ALC or to the NCEC or Portage.
Any other questions? Julie?
I appreciate all the updates. 2 things. I was really appreciative of the way that you did approach the potential school safety issue, and how proactive you were with parents and really making those connections. And we are very grateful for the close working relationship you have with the Northfield Police. So thank you for that work. And then on terms of the PLCs, it's really great to see the work that's going to be done. And then Hope Langston did share in her No Northfield report she sends on Sunday nights. It was really great to see that each of the teams completed a needs assessment. And so not only as, looking at really the overall structure and making sure everyone's on track and really having those deliverables projected, but also to really ask the teams what their needs are and really focusing that professional development around their identified needs. So really great work.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Any other questions or comments? I have a couple. So it's really great to hear about the chess club, and I wondered if there's an update on the world languages. That was another group of parents and students who were trying to figure out what next step.
Yes, I don't have an update on you for that tonight.
Okay.
I do know they were working on the possibility of some alternatives, and I'll bring that to the next meeting.
Okay, that's fair. And then on the PLC teams, are they building wide or team only? Do they ever come together within a building?
Yeah, so they are going to be doing some reporting out on a quarterly basis. And so there's some pieces around staff meetings where there's going to be some opportunities to share some of their successes with their building.
Okay, great. And then I have another one on, sometimes the equity can mean access, and that access sometimes, well, during the pandemic, it meant, do people have internet? Do they have the equipment? Other times access can be around the topic of mental health. So on top of your typical school and adolescent stressors, there could be mental health issues. And so my question is, what have we kept from what we learned during the pandemic in this reset? What have we kept?
From the mental health perspective. Yeah, I think that there'd be a couple things I would share. I think, first of all, the maintaining those school counselors, those additional school counselors, we have found that to be very valuable. And so we're very excited that we have that. And that is, I think, a great entryway to that. I will also tell you some of the things that we didn't keep, right? We weren't able to keep the district's life coach, right? So we had that life coach that fit in that spot that where it was you needed a little bit more help than maybe just talking with a teacher, but you didn't quite need clinical help, right? So there was a difference. And so that district life coach was a certified, unfortunately, we weren't able, that was one-time dollars. We weren't able to keep that going. We have continued to have a strengthened relationship with Fernbrook. And so Fernbrook is a third party that's able to provide some services on our campuses. And I know that they will continue to look, I think we could even potentially have more people if they had more people, but that's also mental health workers are also in a shortage as well. So
Yeah.
those are the two areas that I would say that we have maintained during the pandemic would be those additional counselors at the middle school, the high school, and the area learning center. And then I think strengthening that relationship with Fernbrook. Those would be the two pieces that I could come right. Of course, that goes along with some of the things that we did before the pandemic, like the student supporting students program and the youth mental health first aid that we have provided for our teachers. Our sophomores also get that teen youth mental health first aid as part of their health courses so that they are able to help recognize some of those pieces and be some initial supports for students. So the good news is there are a number of things around mental health that we had started before the pandemic. They became, really important during the pandemic. And then as we come out, we have got some additional adult assistance.
Right. And I appreciate that. And I'm glad to hear about that. I think that I'm also trying to kind of sort through the fact that we can identify that a student or a family member needs additional mental health services, and we got those resources. But on the daily, when they're not, say, getting the material, then how are instructors helping them have access when they're dealing with this, ongoing mental health issue?
Sure. So I will bring some additional information because I think you make a very good point. We did have a number of different pieces for when students were quarantined or other things during the pandemic. We do know that there's been that reboot of how do we make sure that we provide students who are out for a period of time. It isn't the same as it was before, right? Because we're tightening up and doing some more with attendance and things like that.
Right.
So in terms of how do you would like to hear more about what are we doing for students who are out for a period of time? In this case, it happens to be
Or just
specifically.
checked out.
You bet.
Because of their.
Absolutely. We will certainly bring back some presentation for you at one of the next couple of meetings about how we're supporting those students. The focus right now has been on who is at school. How are we making sure that we're talking with parents to try to uncover some of those circumstances? I know that that's been the initial part of the school year at the high school specifically. But we'll have some folks come back and give you some additional information about that.
Sounds good. Thanks. Okay, any other questions, comments? All righty, then we are moving on to item 6, the consent agenda. Okay, so now we move on to the approval of the consent grouping. As a reminder, there was some items in the table file added to the consent grouping. Is there anything anyone would like to pull from the consent grouping for separate consideration? Okay, is there a motion to approve the consent grouping? Moved by Corey, second by Julie. Thank you. All those in favor of approving the consent grouping, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Okay, motion carries. Okay, items for individual action. We have two. First, we have a policy committee recommendations, and I'll take a motion and then we can have discussion. Is there a motion to approve policies 104, 610.1, 612, and 619 as presented? Okay, moved by Amy, second. Second by Tom, thank you. Okay, any questions or comments? Would you like to say anything about
I
policy?
think we presented them at the last meeting.
Very good, okay. So I don't know if you need a minute to look them over. A minute. Okay. Then we have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Okay, motion passes. And finally, we're taking action on the proposed 2022 payable 2023 property tax levy. I will take a motion and then we will discuss. Is there a motion to certify to county auditors the 2022 payable 2023 preliminary levy limitation and certification at the maximum authority? Moved by Julie, second. By Amy. Okay, Dr. Hellman, Director
And-
Murdersoft, want to make any comments?
Al's got a few slides she's going to share
Yep.
with you
Oh,
here.
perfect. All right.
All right, so I'm going to talk a little bit about our page 23 preliminary levy. There we go. So just as a reminder, what the levy actually is and does for us. This levy is our local contribution that contributes about 25% of our total general fund budget. It has components for the general fund, community ed, and our debt service. And it helps pay our debt service obligations. It includes the voter approved referendum and a bunch of other state authorized levies. And it really helps. I mean, 25% of our budget is really significant. So it absolutely helps us provide the world-class learning environment that we do. So this is kind of the typical timeline you'll see. We are required in August to start reporting some of the preliminary and estimated data to MDE. And then we are required as a taxing authority to certify the preliminary levy by September 30th and report that to the counties. As a reminder, we are in 3 counties, Rice, Dakota, and Goodhue. And so we report this to all 3 of them. The county then takes all of that data from all the taxing jurisdictions and calculates out what your property taxes will be and mails the preliminary statements in November. In between that time, we have an opportunity to finalize some things. You might recall we certify at the max. That's the lingo. And all that means is that that's the max we can do at that date. And then we can choose between now and December to under levy items if we wanted to. We have typically not done that. There are very few that we can actually under levy, but that is basically the only difference. Or if we have something on the ballot in November, that would allow us to increase over that. That's the only way you can increase over the amount in September. And then once the Truth and Taxation meeting and the board certifies the final levy in December, again, that's resubmitted to the counties. And then they send out your final tax statements for the next calendar year. So the levy is a little bit complicated with our budget years. So we are paying property taxes January through December. That's the county's fiscal year. But our fiscal year runs July through June. So they're collecting it starting in January. We'll get actually about 50% of that collection in May and June, but we actually defer that revenue into the next fiscal year. And it is revenue for our 23-24 school year. So this slide just shows kind of how much the money is and where does it go. So it's just a little over $21 million, about a 5.63% increase, which I'll get into some more detail on the next slide, but 72% of that is supporting our general fund, about 14.5 million. 2% is community education, and then just shy of 26% is for debt service. So in the general fund, you can see that kind of smaller graph. 8.6 million of that is the referendum. 5.8 million, or about 27%, is general fund other, and that's really the state authorized levies, the LTFM, operating capital, and those sorts of things. And then our capital projects levy, which you've been hearing a lot about recently, is $750,000, about 3.5%. So these are shown in this way very specifically. This is required by the state. We're required to show it by fund, by taxation category, and by tax base. So you can see on the top, the general fund is increasing about 6.85%, or 976,000. Community ed is about 2.75%, just shy of 12,000 additional revenue, and debt services up about 2.58. So I'm going to talk a little bit about what's driving that. I'm actually going to talk about that on the next slide because I think it's easier to follow, but voter approved is our most significant category. About 65%, I believe, is voter approved. And then the tax base, the referendum market value, that is basically only used to calculate the referendum revenue, and almost every other formula in the levy certification is based on net tax capacity. So this one shows you kind of a little more detailed breakout of the different revenue categories that make up the general fund. And you will see there on the top, the referendum increased about $687,000. This was not what I was anticipating. I'm happy for the unanticipated increase though. So this, if you recall, this formula is tied to inflation. So the state calculates an inflationary increase through what is allowed in statute. And it's actually about 12.2% increase. So this is probably the one and only time that I will tell you that the rapidly increasing inflation is good for the district. It is resulting in some additional funds on our levy. This is actually also showing declining enrollment. So in your narrative, I put in a little chart because I know that when I talk about a lot of specific numbers, people go cross-eyed. But basically a 12% increase in our formula allowance and just shy of 3% decrease in our enrollment is netting about an additional 687,000. So as you can see, that's driving a pretty big majority of the increases. Most of the other formulas, as you kind of look down the right, are negative, and that is almost all directly related to our declining enrollment. So as I've said many times, most of our formulas are driven off of enrollment, and so you'll see that kind of playing out there. The other community eds increase, their early childhood revenue is now tied to the basic formula increase. So that one increases automatically. And there's also two different formulas in their calculation that is tied to census population. And so we just went through that this past year. And so that increased slightly, and that's generating a little bit of additional revenue for them. And then the debt service, there was also an increase. And that is primarily related to our middle school roof bond that we did through LTFM. So it will show up in our debt service because it is a bond and we pay it through debt service. But there is a corresponding basically reduction in our LTFM revenue up above on the general fund line. And so that is net neutral to the taxpayers. But I wanted to call that out since it appeared as an increase on here. So overall, just about $1.1 million of additional funding on this preliminary, or a 5.63% increase. In your, or at your table spots, because I did not make it to the table file, was an updated chart from Ellers that included the tax or estimated tax impact. So our Net tax capacity and referendum market value both increased over 14% from the prior year. I have an email request into Rice County to help me understand how much of that is just property value increase and how much of it is actual new additional tax base. But what that effectively means for the tax impact is it's showing roughly a 7% decrease for taxpayers. So when there's a larger tax base, the amount that we are levying gets spread over a wider amount, and then everybody in theory pays a little bit less. So overall, on a $350,000 house, I believe it was like $164 decrease per year, even though we are getting additional revenue. So that was good news. And that's not often that I get to say that. So I'm excited about that. The only other thing that I just want to make the board aware of, and I neglected to put this into my narrative. We found out this summer at training at Rice County that the legislature authorized a required supplemental budget worksheet for all taxing jurisdictions, majority. So basically the county, the city, and the school district. And so this supplemental worksheet is intended to have basically fiscal 22 audited data and then the fiscal 23 budgeted data to show transparency in taxation. However, our audit for 22 is this week, and this form is due to the county by September 30th. And so we will not have audited data. And the way that the chart that they used is actually the exact chart we're already required to publish in the paper after the audit is complete. So basically, every school district is going to have, if they have not completed their audit, which will be the vast majority of them, is going to have a statement on there that basically says this data is not available yet. And I'm concerned that that's going to appear like we're not being transparent. The data is not available. We are currently being audited. And I can't put an estimate on there because the language that they're required to use says audited, and we don't have it. And so that's concerning to me, not only because we're going to have to pay additional costs. All of the taxing jurisdictions pay a portion for all of the mailings in the truth and taxation process. So it's going to be an additional cost. Which is frustrating because it's already something we're required to publish publicly in the paper, and it's out on the website. So I just want you to be aware that that's going to come with all of your property tax statements in November. And it's going to be blank for the school district, basically. And that is why. So if you would like to add another thing on your list of things to talk to the legislature about, that would be it. But I wanted you to be aware of it. So it's not a surprise when that comes in the mail. But that's why it's blank, because we do not have that data available. It'll say, please reach out to the school district for more information. So as always, if anyone is truly looking for the information, they're always welcome to reach out and we would provide it. But that's what is happening there. So the levy trends, our average for the last 5 years has been about 1.91%. So overall, very stable. We pride ourselves on having a stable levy so that there's not large swings from year to year for our taxpayers. And even a 5.63% increase is effectively going to be a decrease for taxpayers, which is a great place to be. So that, I think, is all the information. Again, 1.1 million or 5.63%. Really primarily driving that inflationary increase from our referendum amount. We do have some significant abatement adjustments. I didn't show that about or talk about that above, but I think it was about $72,000. And the abatements is when basically people or organizations are allowed to relieve the amount that they owe the county or city or the taxing jurisdiction. And so then the state chips in that amount of money to make sure that our total dollar amount is held harmless. So that was a lot of information really quickly, but I would gladly take any questions if you had any.
Thank you, Val. Board members, questions or comments? Amy.
Again, thank you for putting lots of information in a very organized form. And I have two questions for you.
Sure.
So the 7% reduction that you're talking about, does that not, that's only, is that assuming that their property values haven't increased?
Yes, I didn't say that out loud and I almost always remember to. So yes, that is all of the tax impact statements or analysis assumes that that everything's held the same, except for the things that they know. And so if your property value goes up, your taxes would in theory go up as well. But I mean, the other way to say it is if your property value, your taxable market value goes up 7%, you would in theory pay exactly the same for your school district taxes that you did in the prior year.
Okay. And then my second question is on the, if the capital projects levy referendum passes, does that affect this in any way?
No, this is our final year to levy the $750,000. So assuming that were to pass in November, then that would show up on our pay 24.
Thank you.
Yep.
Good. Thank you. Okay, Amy. I'm sorry, Julie.
No problem. So it'll be really interesting to see what Rice County, how that breakout is. We're hoping that there's a increase in our net tax capacity in terms of increased businesses in our school district taxing area. The other question I have, when you say we're being audited, that's part of our regular audit. That's
Yes.
right. So I
Yep.
think that's a important clarification. The state hasn't run in and said we need to audit. you.
Oh, no.
Right.
Nope. Our annual audit. Yes.
So I imagine I would imagine other districts timing may have this same issue. Is there any sort of, I probably already know the answer, but is the state providing any relief for the due date of that new form? Because it is problematic for audits that have been scheduled within the state allowed time to do that audit for a school district.
So from what I can tell, no, they're not. My understanding is that what was added into law last year or in the spring, was that they had to include it in the preliminary tax statement, which goes out in November. So there would not be enough time because if you think about it, like we have 3 different counties. And so for every combination of taxing jurisdiction, there could be a different sheet. So there's one that has, Dakota County and the city of Northfield and the school district, and then Rice County, the, Faribault and the Faribault, like there's all kinds of combinations that they can have. And so that was my understanding, is that it was really intended to go with the November mailing. If they were to say an additional one had to go with your final certified in the spring, then we could certainly have it where we have it published. We're required by law to publish that in the paper within 7 days of our audit being approved. So we have that every single year, usually in November, December at the very latest. And so we could do that, but my understanding is that it's not a requirement, and I don't anticipate the counties would choose to go through all of that work, collecting all the data again. Every district in the Big 9 is choosing to have the statement. Masbo had a whole session on it with MDE about what the proper language to use so that we were providing a consistent phrase for taxpayers, but that's my understanding. So.
Well, I'm sorry, because it really is problematic, and hopefully, I don't know, we could be cautiously optimistic. Maybe that language would be addressed in coming sessions to correct that language, because I don't know if anyone teed that up at the time, but it's certainly an issue. And
yeah,
we are very transparent. School districts are incredibly transparent, and just having this additional form that they are already being provided is not only redundant, but it really is, again, problematic and presenting a challenge. And I think for the most part, you know, the way you are choosing to explain it to taxpayers will be fine. And hopefully you would have those one-on-one conversations with anyone who wants to explore that, because you're extremely good at explaining that to not only the board, but taxpayers who call you frequently around that time. So, you know, I think the plan to address it is really sound, but I do apologize for the distress that is for you, because that is not your moda operandi, as we all know you. And so I understand how this is really distressful for you, but we understand there's a reason behind it. So thank you.
So Val, this new audit report or audit worksheet was required to be done before September 30th with audited results. Would you just explain to people, what is the date that Minnesota Department of Education requires audit reports to be filed by?
December 31st.
So let's just point it out, September 30th, and yet there are still another full several months before the audit. So you're not allowed to start the audit until after you've closed the books in June. And so there is very few people, it's very small districts who can turn that audit around before September. So it is a legislative, just the left hand not talking with the right hand, so to speak. But people still have the statutory authority to complete their audits before December. And I do think that the public understands why we are so concerned about having to put something in the tax statement that says, don't have the data yet, but yet no one's required to have it submitted until December 31st.
Did you?
Yeah, thanks for your report. I was going to say, obviously, levies for learning and bonds for buildings. On this levy, is that based off, I mean, whether taxes go up or down? Is that based off more the market value assessment or the tax value assessment?
So I think those sort of go hand in hand.
If your market value goes up a little bit, usually your taxes do, but it's a matter of how quick that catches up with you.
Yep. So if our dollars are primarily calculated on net tax capacity, which is your market value divided by your class rate. I'm going to try not to get real technical. And so they do go hand in hand, but my understanding with the way this chart reads is that if your market value is going up 7% and your school district taxes are technically showing an estimated 7% decrease, that you'd be kind of just washing out, right? You'd be paying the same amount, even though your property value went up. If your property value stayed exactly the same, which never happens, but if it did, you would see a 7% decrease in what you were paying on behalf of the school district. The other part that makes that super complicated for people to understand is it's on a sheet with 4 or 5 other taxing jurisdictions. So while ours might look like it went up really slightly or decreased slightly, the other ones could be driving that bottom total, and they're not necessarily dispersing that information and seeing which entity is really charging what. But it's very difficult because the calculations are very complex and it's hard to explain that to people. But overall, my back of the napkin math would say that if our net tax capacity went up 14%, and our taxes are showing roughly a 7% decrease. In my mind, that says that we added tax base, right? There's more taxpayers helping to absorb the cost. So that's what I'm hopeful for, but it's really difficult to say because each property is different and each taxing jurisdiction is different. Did that answer your question, Jeff?
No, that's a long discussion, and especially with all of it. It's too bad, you know, people especially bring in your tax statement and people look at it and obviously they don't understand it very well, but I mean, they just look, it's gone, you know, up or down and what's, you know, consistent. So, I mean, there's a lot of moving parts within that. And I mean, it gets it gets really complicated for people.
Yep, it does.
And I think the important part, Jeff, there is when people receive their preliminary tax statement in November, it's really important for us to encourage our friends and neighbors to look at it and then look at the different meetings, because each taxing jurisdiction has to have their truth and taxation meeting. And so I think one of the key things is our truth and taxation meeting is scheduled with our only board meeting in December. And so we are typically the last truth and taxation meeting. So we will have, it's not been uncommon for people to show up to our truth and taxation meeting. But when you really look at their tax statement, it was another taxing jurisdiction where that increased their property taxes versus the school district. So I think one of the things that we can do as a board and as a district is to encourage people to look at that tax statement to make sure that they look who made the impact for them. Is it the city? Is it the county? Is it the school? There's some other modest pieces that are on there, and then attend those truth and taxation meetings. The other common piece that I think is difficult is that when people get that tax statement in November, that's when they look at their housing valuation and say, wait a minute, my house isn't, but that process is actually completed in April. So 6 months before this, that's when the issue is. So I think we need to take every one of those opportunities, Jeff, to make sure that we're helping educate people about the process that the county goes through to value their house. And then that it isn't just one taxing jurisdiction, right? It's multiple taxing jurisdictions, and we're educators, so we can educate people on that.
Thank you. Any more questions? Corey?
Just want to reiterate one thing Val said earlier. We're driven by formulas on our taxing authority and then also enrollment. So our enrollment's down 3%. So that's a significant decrease. So we're not going to pull in as many dollars from our tax capacity. Is that correct? So while home values and tax capacity is higher, we're taxing from fewer students, correct?
Yes, but we levy a specific dollar amount.
Right.
So the dollar amount we are levying is actually a 5.63% increase. And again, that's primarily driven because of that inflationary increase on the referendum authority. But overall, there are certainly some areas where the revenue is decreasing. You could see that on the chart that I shared, but overall, we are asking for more dollars at the end of the day, if that makes sense.
Anyone else? Okay, thank you, Val.
Thanks.
See you. Okay, we are at item, oh, I'm sorry.
We actually take the vote because this is unusual. and
Oh,
we
I'm
did
sorry,
the
yes.
motion and then we had the presentation.
Yes,
so we missed
that's
it.
right. Thank you.
You bet.
Okay, so we have a motion. And, now I'm lost. We have a motion to certify to county auditors the 2022 payable 2023 preliminary levy limitation and certification at the maximum authority. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Okay, item 8 is items for information. And so we have another public meeting scheduled for October 6th at 6 p.m. in the district office gymnasium. Enter from door 5. That we will discuss again capital projects levy referendum. And then you can also get information from the website, the homepage, northfieldschools.org/CPL. And then we have a farm to school luncheon at Spring Creek on Thursday, October 27th at Spring Creek Elementary. The Child Nutrition Department will host state and local leaders along with farm to school advocates for a lunch, and board members are invited to attend. Contact Stephanie Stormy, Director of Child Nutrition, for information and to RSVP. Our future meetings, we have a work session this Thursday, September 29th at 5 p.m. in the district boardroom. Our regular meetings will be on Monday, October 10th, October 24th, and November 14th, 6 p.m. in the district boardroom. That is all the business that we have for tonight. Julie, did you want to make a comment?
We had an enrollment report in the table file.
Okay.
Yep, I want to talk about the table file here. So just give me 1 second to get back there. So we normally don't bring you an enrollment report until the first meeting in October, but because what Val shared right during the levy presentation, and because we know that we had such a significant discussion about enrollment at the end of last year, we thought we'd give you just the preliminary levy report. So in the packet, what you had, or not the levy report, enrollment report, forgive me, preliminary enrollment report. So we always capture the first, there are 3 dates before we typically in the past had given you an enrollment report. We take a count on day number 1. This year was September 6th. We take one at the end of the first week, which was this year was September 9th. While we were getting ready for the meeting, our information services department was putting together the September 23rd update. It's not quite done yet. You'll see that when we give you the October update. At the bottom of that first page, I just want to point out to you, we have a grand total that includes a number of other of students who aren't necessarily K-12 or full-time. So we then have this, you'll see that the second to last line says budget or full-time only excluding early childhood and part-time independent study. That is the number that we are looking at in terms of, truly what we're going to generate from the state. Basically, that's the number that we're using to generate dollars from the state. And so that second to last line, we're now adding something that's called the budget projection. So we're putting into the report, what did the finance department project for the enrollment for the coming year? And then we're giving you the difference. So right now, and you know that enrollment can change significantly during the year. Right now, we're showing plus 30 on September 9th over what was projected for this school year. So we're going to give you that running total through the year so that you can see how we are doing compared to what we projected, because as Val has shared many times, that's an important part of understanding what kind of revenue we're going to get in a variety of different sources. So again, very preliminary. We've never provided this to you this early before, but based on the budget prioritization, based on a number of other things, we felt it was appropriate to bring this preliminary report to you tonight. I do want to point out on the second page of the report, I know some of the items have run over their columns, but I really do want to point out class sizes at the elementary school, because that was one of the chief priorities of the budget teams last spring. So I want you just to notice, for those of you who have paid attention to this over the years, you're seeing some very small class sizes comparatively to what we've seen in the past. So I think that demonstrates that there are some places where there are just some things you can't do based upon a certain cohort, et cetera, space at the building. But I think that for those of you who have followed the enrollment report for some time, you know that these class sizes are actually pretty amazing. And so I want you to show you that despite the challenges that we had by making reductions, we really meant what we said, that it was a prioritization process. In some areas, we're going to receive some additional support, and other areas we're going to be reduced. And this report is an example of how we improved an area over previous years. So I'd be happy to take any questions on the initial enrollment report. Again, preliminary.
Julie.
Well, I thank you for including this. It was really exciting to see. So a couple questions. The number that we're all sort of always interested in is kindergarten, which looks like it's 237. And Val, I went back and it looked like our weighted for kindergarten projection was 257.7. So is that about the kindergarten class size we anticipated, just curious.
I'd have to go look quick.
Okay. Yeah, I was really curious to see what that was, but if you look at plus 30 students, that's almost $300,000. So it's not.
For right now.
For right now.
We do tend to see some reduction in enrollment during the year. That's been the typical trend.
No, I know, I'm getting excited. I understand.
We were
that, but
excited
this is-
before. We've had 2 more hours to think about it. So we've all come
So
back to.
I'm excited about this. The other question I had was, how are you feeling about the Portage numbers?
Well, I have to tell you, I just don't know what to think about the Portage numbers. And the reason that I say that is that we are in the messy middle of this online opportunity in Minnesota. We had the required piece of it a couple of years ago where we had nearly 500 students or more participating in it. Last year, we were in the 100s, the 120s. Just a few weeks ago, we were only at 40, and now we're at 58. So I do think that Portage is going to be something that you're going to see increase during, I'm predicting right now, every school year for a variety of different reasons, but this marketplace is still settling itself out. And there are some longtime players in the field, which I think we're getting some of. I think public school districts, public school districts are getting some of those folks who had been in online charters and things like that before. I just don't, anyone who says they think they know where this is going, I'd like to know what they're looking at, because we've got some fairly decent analysts in our district, and I don't think we know where it's going, right? Because there are districts who have increased their programming. There are districts who have maintained it like we have, and others who have just bailed on it and they've dissolved it because they had not nearly the amount of interest that they thought they would have. So I think we're still in this development stage of it. So I don't know what to make of them, Julie. We are ready to make a push We are ready to make another marketing push at several key points of the year, right around MEA. We're going to do another marketing push outside of the district. Then in late November and late December, and then probably late January as well is probably the last, but we've got some spots where we're going to target some marketing outside of the district to make sure that people know if they are thinking about some kind of change of course at that time, that we are something that's available to them.
Okay, well, thank you again for including this, and I know it will be also very interesting when we get the open enrollment report as well. So, thank you.
Your analysis was correct. I have 237 projected for kindergarten, so.
Excellent.
So that's, or no, 257. So 237 is less than what I projected, but that means that there's 20 students somewhere else in other grades that are making up for that, basically. Does that make
All right.
sense?
Yeah, totally. Thank you.
Very good. Thank you, Tom.
The numbers, the total and the grand total line went down by 6 and the Portage numbers went up, especially in the high school grades. Did some of the high school students maybe move to Portage? Any idea of knowing that?
So Tom, you're looking at page 1 where we went down. So those, the numbers on that first page, Tom, they include Portage students. So if that would have been a student who would have left the high school and gone to Portage, they would stay in that count.
Right, but but what I'm wondering is so you look at the high school, it went from 1270 to 1255. And the or the Portage went from 49 to 58, and some of those increases were in the high school grade. So I'm just wondering.
Yes,
if
that
some of
is
they
possible.
just switched from one to the other. You
That's-
didn't lose them, they just switched.
That is possible when you're looking at high school versus Portage. I'm sorry, I thought you were
right.
talking about the bottom line
Yeah, yeah.
numbers. The
No,
total.
yeah,
Yes,
sorry.
that is very possible that some of those high school students who were originally enrolled face to face then shifted, or they were probably even actually already enrolled in Portage, but the crosswalk just didn't make it there in time for the first enrollment report.
Good questions. Anyone else? Okay. Okay, so that is all the business that we have tonight. Is there a motion to adjourn? Okay, moved by Noel, second by Jeff. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Okay, motion carries. We are adjourned.